2024 budget, there are some who are, again, as a business person and as an entrepreneur and even a mid-level business, they're worried about taxes, and taxes. And they feel that they are being taxed to their grave. Some of the other entrepreneurs, they're worried about that one. What should be the strategy?
We do. I mean, and I've talked about this over and over. I just said a few minutes ago that we tend to stabilize the macro by destroying the micro.
Interesting.
And, yeah. I mean, if you overtax the businesses, you are essentially killing the businesses at the micro level. But you do that.
Is that the situation? Do you think that is the situation that
we are overtaxed? I mean, we are overtaxed. There is no doubt about that. But let me define the we, and I think that is where the challenge is. The we are those who are paying taxes. The people who are not paying taxes are outside the bracket are large, and therefore, because it's easier to focus on the formal sector who are paying taxes. Once you pay tax, then they always come after you with new introduction.
But it's interesting. I had this way back in secondary school.
It hasn't changed.
Over the years, the strategy, the argument, the works, IMF, the Swiss government, technical support, it appears we have not gotten around this challenge in terms of trying to bring in more persons into the tax bracket. So the same Mr. Dorte and David and
George
AB and all the rest are the same people paying the taxes.
George, I've made this analysis before. It's not complex. It's not a very complex thing. I think educated people look at things in too sophisticated a way. And at times it creates problems for them because they're analyzing things using the lens that they should not be using. How many people have bank accounts in Ghana? You know that figure.
We had 3 million long ago, but
let's give 5 million. Let's give 5 million. So I've heard figures 3, 4 million, etc. Let's make it 5 million. How many people vote on the average?
A lot.
It's about 16 million.
Yeah.
So that means that you have a third or less of the people who are above 18 who have bank accounts.
Yeah.
Now, how do you tax people who don't have bank accounts? Now, one of the biggest opportunities we got was when people were using mobile money. And I made this statement before that E-levy was a wrong policy. What we could have done was, because a number of people were now having mobile money, using mobile money, one of the ways to have included them is simply to have asked all the telcos to turn every Momo into a bank account, zero balance bank account. Just because you have a Momo, a bank of your choice, I give you a bank account, that will have brought in the additional 80% we are lacking because you can identify them. What do we do with that? What we do with that is that we check how many of you have got a tax identification number. You and I have, and that's why we keep paying more. If you don't have a tax identification number, that means you are not paying tax. It's as simple as that, unless you are paying some local government rates and they tear the ticket for you. Hopefully, that's what is being done. But other than that, if I gave you a bank account, then I do a simple thing. I go back to turnover tax. Every money that goes through your Momo, I take 5% of it. In order not to be taxed, you go and get a TIN number, because if you get a TIN number, then I can track you. That way, we will have brought people into the financial sector, the so-called financial inclusion. I would have had an increase in people with bank accounts who are above 18. I will be able to give a tax identification number, and then I wouldn't do E-levy. So that was a way that you could bring people into the bracket. If you don't bring people into the bracket, then those who are already paying pay more. And why do they? Because when we are broke, we go to IMF. The first thing they will tell you, among other things, is that tax to GDP ratio is low.
And that's why they're putting pressure on government to raise more revenue.
Yeah, between 15 and 18%, which is below the average even on the continent to the people, the group we belong. And therefore, you need to increase your tax to GDP ratio. How do you do that? You do that by collecting more from those who are already paying. I've already told you that for the private businessman, there are 3 ways to increase income, right? Increase what you are selling, as if people will buy. And I may come back to this. It's an important principle we miss. Sell more of the same at same price, or find new sources of buying. Now let's turn it into government. How does government increase income? Because government is quote and unquote not a business. Simply create more new taxes, or get the people who are paying to pay more, or go to areas who are not paying and collect the taxes. Same principle. We've lost the third one. We've never been collecting from those who are not paying. And therefore, we are collecting more from those who are already paying and selling more taxes to them. That's exactly what is being done. So it stifles business. It's because we are using a principle. If you take US, UK, Western economies, you use OECD principles. How do you tax businesses? From what sources do you take the taxes, etc.? We are applying that. But that is just like using a Goldman Sachs strategy over a wayside kiosk. The context is not the same. And it creates a problem for businesses. What businesses must do to respond to that is different. The taxes are burdening. And let's forget, taxes are not the only thing that affects businesses. Cost of borrowing affects businesses, which is why I have a problem with monetary policy rate increases. Because when you look at the build-up of cost of borrowing, the major factor is loss provision, unless something has changed. The last time I checked, this loss provision, which simply means the banks are making a provision for the assumption that somebody else will not pay the money it is borrowing, and as a result, I have to pay a higher rate. In any event, do all the banks take their money from government? Why is monetary policy such a factor to determining an increase in the borrowing rate? But that's what is happening. So that ends up making cost of doing business very, very high and make our businesses non-competitive, especially, and we should be very careful about this, especially in an environment of AFCFTA, where we are one of the countries in the guided trade initiative. If our products from outside has to compete with products from another country, take Kenya as an example. Kenya is borrowing at about 12%. Recently, when it went to 13%, there was hue and cry. You are borrowing at about 30%. Cost of power to industry in Kenya is less than Ghana. If you take Ethiopia, cost of power to industry is 6 cents per kilowatt hour. Here you are doing anything between 13 and 19 cents per kilowatt hour. So your cost of production is higher. In a single market environment, you are more disadvantaged with your products and services.
Mr. Dorte, are you worried that just like that saying of maybe we are taxing or should be careful on how we depend so much on the geese that is laying the golden eggs, we could end up crashing these businesses that are being overtaxed?
I don't think they will crash. I mean,
it will get to a time where they can no longer be able to.
But crash is a very harsh word. I will explain why.
They get to a time they cannot be able to meet these obligations of paying these taxes because you are taxing them too much. There even been reports about a campaign that's supposed to have shut down because of the current. We've still not been able to verify that. So it is one of maybe 1,000. But if you have the likes of Unilever complaining that we should be careful because we end up then resulting in more of a tax avoidance. And the CEO said that we should be careful about how we go about the tax policy and strategy. Otherwise, we'll get to a time where even these big firms will try to employ means and means to lessen their tax obligations.
So I want to break it down. I mean, and I believe in behavior. So that's why I don't want to use the word crash for everybody. Businesses will re-strategize first. They won't crash. There are a lot of manufacturers who are no more manufacturing and importing and selling. I don't want to mention names, but we've had less and less people going into manufacturing because they realize that manufacturing is very expensive. We've just added carbon tax to and that's going to affect manufacturing, especially if you are using hydrocarbons as a source of fuel. So it's going to increase their cost even more. Now, in the manufacturing sector, it stifles them to the point that it's become difficult to expand and to manufacture. In the services sector, it drives more people to go into services, and as services become more expensive, you realize that the services sector cannot expand. But there is no country with good services which doesn't have good manufacturing and good industry, because services actually is driven by manufacturing. That's the situation. So